misconception is that most people think that the CEO and their management are good if the individuals are smart, driven, confident, and they're very good at selling. Because if they're confident, they must know what they're doing. But I think actually, for me, this should be considered sort of table stakes. It should be the minimum that we're realistically looking for. And the reason for that is because, I mean, think about it, right? To get to CEO position of any company, more than likely, you're going to have to be smart, driven already. So I don't think that's enough to differentiate yourself as a CEO. I think, and in fact, as a director, because I think that is sort of the minimum bar that's set. It's like turning up to work. It's the minimum that you should expect from a management team. And I think actually what I look for are a few other things that sort of differentiate a good management team for me versus a bad management team or a mediocre management. So first one for me is the question I ask myself is the management team overqualified? Because what that means is I'm looking for managers that have had experience running what the company is currently running now. So for example, if a bank that I'm looking at is growing their loan book from 600 million to, let's say they're targeting $3 billion in the long term, I would ideally want to see a management team or a CEO or someone on that board that has already gone through that transition from A to B, because that makes the whole transaction a lot easier because they have the connections, they know what they previously didn't know, so they're less likely to make any major mistakes because of things they were unaware of, because that going from 600 million to 3 billion has different problems. And generally you can have more confidence behind them that will occur, and generally that process will actually be quicker as well, just because they have the experience of doing it. So that's the first thing, is I'm looking for an overqualified management team. Are they actually too good for the position that they currently in? That to me is a really positive sign. Another really positive sign that I see is when I see that management join the board or join, and actually there's people following them into their new role, into their new company. They're able to attract high quality talent, people that they've worked with previously and had success with, and actually those people are loyal to them, because to me that says that actually this is a very good individual. To be able to attract others, particularly from another company which is they're already stable, etc., really shows me that there's something behind that individual. And then the third thing I really look for is customer obsession, or the mindset behind management team. What's their philosophy? And ideally I want to see customer obsession or some sort of alignment to shareholders, and that could just be focusing on returns of capital as well, being conscious of the return of capital to shareholders. So it varies industry by industry. That's sort of why I put this in a general bucket, because for consumer products I generally want to see someone that's very customer driven, because pretty much always that comes back to the shareholders in a beneficial way. If long term we can provide the best offer to the customer by far. If you just think of some pretty obvious examples of like Jeff Bezos, Apple at the time, etc., that's a really big one for me. And then the second, in fact, a lesser known company, Kaspi, has done a phenomenal job of this, and they've pretty much just they are the unofficial bank of Kazakhstan now. So if you want to check them out, check them out. And they've just done amazing following this playbook. I mean, their whole thing is that they only track what's going to improve the net promoter score, and they've done very well off that to become the unofficial Kazakhstan bank is insane as a private player. Okay, and where it can differ is if there's an industry where it's more commoditized per se, such as oil and gas, then it's not really about the customer experience, in the sense that the oil is sold at a commoditized price. So regardless of your offering, it's not going to make too much of a difference. At that point, I'd be more concerned about management's return on capital and their focus to provide value to shareholders. Is this something that's just going to increase the size of the company and then ultimately the size of management's paycheck, or is it actually going to provide long-term shareholder value? Is it going to be accretive, or is it just going to be one of those words that management love to throw around, particularly when they ever acquire any sort of company? They always like to say it's accretive, but whether that actually is something you need to decide for yourself. And that's been a really good indicator for me, particularly if you go back over the last few years of acquisitions they made. That tends to give you a really good sense for sort of their track record there as well. For example, there's this company I'm following. It's an oil and gas play, and they made this acquisition, phenomenal acquisition, where not only did they defer some of the payments, yes, they did dilute some of the shareholders slightly, but even then that was at a relatively high valuation at the time. But on top of that, that acquisition was so profitable that it actually paid itself off in 5 quarters, which is ridiculous. It's pretty much unheard of. And again, I'm not expecting that every single time, because I mean, you know, if I could get a return on invested capital of 80% every single time, that'd be amazing. But I don't think it's very realistic every single time. But my point here is that if you can see that they previously made acquisitions where actually it was a bit too big for them and a bit too ambitious, so there was so-called accretive benefits which never really filtered through into the numbers, then I'd be a bit more concerned in comparison to the example I just gave you a minute ago. So that's generally what I look for. If you've got any other questions, let me know. I think they're the main ones that I generally think separate the best from the rest. Hope that helps.